There have been 2 practices so far for Steelers training camp. We're going to break those down, what the quarterback battle is, and why there's so much excitement in the Steelers secondary. I'm Chris Carter, host of the Locked On Steelers podcast, joined today by Brooke, Pryor of ESPN. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on this video if you enjoyed. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube video to get all of our YouTube channels and all of our daily episodes, as well as breaking news updates. Joined today by Brooke Pryor of ESPN. She's back on the show. It's been a minute. Brooke, you were globetrotting for a bit and getting to experience life before football camp, but now your life is over because we're stuck at Latrobe.
Well, God, that is exactly how it feels. But it's not the worst thing because we get to watch football every day.
Absolutely.
And the best part about training camp is that we're standing on the sideline. We are as close as we're going to get, and we can tell everyone exactly what's happening. We might not be able to post videos per the media policy, but I can give you a play-by-play of 7 shots, and I can give you a play-by-play of a team period and tell you who's running with the first team, second team. And that is a relief to not be constantly trying to confirm the things that I'm seeing with my own eyes with someone in the locker room. This is the best time to report on the NFL.
Absolutely, because you're right. Especially on the Steelers, because certain places, certain teams, they allow more videos and more things like that. The Steelers are like, hey, once that team period's up, no videos. Now, people in the stands be taking videos. That's another story. I'm not here to gripe about that. I'm here to talk to you about the quarterback situation, because with the 7 shots, they skipped 7 shots in the first practice, but they did bring it back in the second practice, and the offense did win. Mitch Trubisky scored on 3 of 4 attempts, and then Mason Rudolph scored on 1 of 3 attempts, giving the offense a 4-3 victory in 7 shots. For those who don't know what 7 shots is, it's a standard daily drill the Steelers do where the offense is at the 2-yard line. They get 7 chances to get into the end zone, and it's determined, do they get in versus the defense stopping them. Just a chance for them to work red zone, opportunities. But one of the big things before we get into how Mitch and Mason have looked, no Kenny Pickett and when I posted that on Twitter, people were like, how could this happen? Why are you doing this to us? And it's just that. I was like, okay, everyone calm down. He's literally the 3rd string quarterback. Did any other 3rd string quarterback just jump into 7 shots right away? I don't think so. So, Brooke, I just want to get a sense from you, because one, Kenny has thrown a few interceptions. He's also had some good plays, but I look at this and I say, this was why they brought in Mitch. This was why they kept Mason, because whichever rookie they got, there was going to be this learning curve.
Right, exactly. I think back to when I covered the Chiefs and I was going through training camp with Patrick Mahomes. He wasn't a rookie at this point, but it was his first year going to be a starter. Mm-hmm. And he would have days where he'd throw 2, 3, 4 interceptions, and everyone is losing their minds. Guys, it turned out okay. I'm not saying here that Kenny Pickett is the next Patrick Mahomes. However, I say that let's exercise some caution here. Let's take a breath. And I know that is very much easier said than done, because we're seeing football for the first time in months. We're seeing Kenny Pickett for the first time in some closer to game-like situations with the Steelers. But also, they're still in shorts. There are no pads. He has had 2 practices with the entire team. Let's just take a breath. I mean, I think that the way that Mike Tomlin is handling this quarterback competition is the way that we should all approach this, where he says, I'm not going to micromanage throw by throw. You're not going to win or lose the quarterback competition on a single throw. We're not hyper-analyzing things. We need to take a 30,000-foot view. And at this point, the plane is taking off, and we can still very firmly see the ground. I mean, your cell phone might still work. We are so
I love that.
We are so barely taking off. So let's just take a breath.
Indeed. Let's take a breath. Now, again, going back to this, first of all, I want to point out, I love your bit so far. It's only been 2 days, but I love your bit where you're going to ask Mike Tomlin every day, hey, have you named a starting quarterback? And the first day he was like, ask me tomorrow. And you did ask him the next day. I thought that was pretty funny. I want everyone to know, if you hear Brooke ask that question and you're thinking, oh, why did she ask that question? He knows it's a no question. She's doing a joke, man. Like it's part of we're having fun with training camp. Like, geez, y'all need to get over yourself. But let's talk about the quarterbacks that have been playing more. And we've seen Mitch Trubisky. I thought it was hilarious and true to Pittsburgh in form. First two passes he throws, incomplete passes. One Najee didn't look for. The other was a little low on Claypool. And immediately from the stands, and you and I are standing right next to each other, and you hear, put Kenny Pickett in. And I'm like, oh, boy, here we go. We started this. But Mitch has come along a little bit. He's starting to develop that chemistry. He hit George Pickens with a deep ball. He's been able to show some chemistry. He looked really good in 7 shots. What have you seen out of him as a starter so far, Brooke?
Well, I think it's just that it took him some time, much like it's taking Kenny Pickett, but Mitch Trubisky is going to – I'm so wound up about it, I can't keep my voice together. Mitch Trubisky's runway is shorter because he's a veteran, because he's done this before.
Right.
So he's going to get acclimated faster. I do think that his consistency has shown up more. I think one thing that George Pickens said that really stuck out to me was – he was asked about the deep ball from Mitch Trubisky. And he said, well, yeah, Mitch is like kind of the only guy that's willing to push it that far. To me, I think that that's encouraging for Mitch Trubisky, because the deep ball, at least a consistent deep ball, is something that's been missing from this offense for a little bit. So you want to see a quarterback that has that, but it's not great for Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett. But again, it's so early. They will have their chances. But I like seeing that Mitch is pushing it down the field. I liked what I saw in 7 shots. He hit Claypool for a nice touchdown on the left sideline, back corner of the end zone on the first one. A couple nice ones over the middle. One pass to Zach Gentry that probably should have been a touchdown, but it was broken up. I believe it was a broken up, and now I can't remember who broke it up.
I think it was. It was Edmonds.
Yeah, that's what it was. So I like what I've seen out of Mitch so far, but this is also about what I expected to see. I mean, he's not coming out here. He's not the second coming of Josh Allen after spending a year with Josh Allen in Buffalo, but I would expect to see him playing a little bit more free and more loose, because I don't want to say he has nothing to lose because he has the starting quarterback job to lose, but it's not quite as high pressure as being the Bears' number 2 overall pick. He's now had a chance to live through that system, go to Buffalo, get his head on straight, be in a more, I don't want to say nurturing environment, but be in a place that educates players, that helps him. He talked about being in a winning atmosphere, winning culture, and now he's in Pittsburgh. And I just think that this is going to be a place that he can continue to kind of get back on track and be the quarterback that he wanted to be when he came out in the draft.
I like your airplane analogies so far, talking about, we're just taking off with the quarterback race and saying that there's he has to do less of a runway here for Mitch Trubisky. I will say, it takes about an NFL salary to afford flying these days with the prices that are going up in the industry. But if a lot of people, if they were to look at this quarterback race and they saw Mason Rudolph, they say, well, that's the Spirit Airlines of the group. But I'd say Mason has looked extremely well. He's been confident. He's been accurate. Now, deep ball's still not his best thing, but he's getting the ball there. And you're seeing that's why they kept him, because he knows this offense. And if all else fails, if Mitch Trubisky just has a terrible day and Kenny Pickett is just not ready, that guy who has the second most starts of a quarterback under Mike Tomlin, behind only Ben Roethlisberger, he can at least go in there and say, hey, manage this offense. Just don't lose us the game. That's why they kept him. And I think in at least the first 2 practices, he's shown that. Yeah,
exactly. We're going to keep using this airplane analogy. Mason Rudolph is like Spirit Airlines, but they've just been bought by JetBlue. So they're more legit. They're more consistent. You can rely on them a little bit more. At least that's the hope. Because I agree with you. I think that Mason Rudolph, he's also playing how you would expect him to play.
Right.
Maybe not how you would expect him to play with the reputation that he has in Pittsburgh, which is, I think, largely unfair and has been blown out of proportion, because a lot of it has been the situations that he has been put in that have not helped him out developmentally or with his reputation here. But I mean, I just keep thinking about that first team period that we saw, the third downs, where Mitch went 2 of 4, Mason went 4 of 4, and Kenny went 1 of 4, I believe.
Yeah.
To me, actually, it might have been Mitch 1 of 4. Regardless, Mason Rudolph was the most accurate out of that bunch. And I think it just shows that he's not the flashy option. He's not going to give you, crazy plays, all these deep balls, all this stuff, but he knows the system. He's comfortable in the system. He's a Toyota Camry, and a Toyota Camry reliably gets you from point A to point B. We are really planes, trains, and automobiles. We got to figure out a train analogy next, but I'm not as well versed in the world of trains, but I'm going to start thinking about it.
Hey, well, hey, maybe we'll talk some trains, because we're going to talk about the train that's moving, and that's the Steelers secondary, because they were making a lot of plays out there with some turnovers. We're going to talk about those turnovers, and we got to talk to some Steelers cornerbacks yesterday. We'll go over that with Brooke in just a second here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, got to talk to you guys about BetOnline.net, your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including Major League Baseball, which is going on right now. If you want all the odds, the ends of everything going on in Major League Baseball, go to BetOnline.net right now. And if you want to get ready for both the NFL as well as the NBA, NHL, all those things, they have all the prop bets, all the things, the preseason bets that you want to get into to predict how many wins your team's going to get, as well as who's going to win MVP. All those things available at BetOnline.net, your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends of the action when you visit BetOnline, where the game starts. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. She's Brooke Pryor of ESPN. Brooke, I wanted to talk to you about the secondary for a little bit here, because I thought that they've been making some really good plays. You've been starting to see some of the veteranness of the group, because you look at Cam Sutton. He's been around. Levi Wallace, he just got here, but he's been in the league for 4 or 5 years. Ahkello Witherspoon, same deal, been in the league for, he was here last year. And they're kind of on this three-way, like, where are we going to line up type of cornerback battle. But when you talk to these guys, there is a confidence in one another. Even though Ahkello Witherspoon just got here last year, even though Levi Wallace literally just got here this year, there's a comfort that seems to be coming from the group. And I wanted to first, we're going to look at Cam Sutton. In the next segment, we're going to look at a statement from Levi Wallace. But here's Cameron Sutton yesterday when I was asking him about this group.
You guys looking at it like, hey, this is going to be a more complex year than we've been able to put out before.
I don't think it'll be too much outside of our foundation. Like I said, with the variety of guys that we have, we do have that flexibility to complex our defense week in, week out. Sometimes some weeks are going to be more simple than others. Right. Offenses change by the week, not necessarily by the season. So, there's different things of how they want to attack us, whether they see it the previous week or just having an understanding of us as a team that's in the division. You know what I mean? So everybody has a foundational base and kind of things that they were necessarily hone into on, as a whole. Our job is just to make those things go. X's and O's is just on a sheet of paper. It's all about the guys that's out there getting the job done.
What have you seen out of?
So Cam Sutton, also one of the best people to talk to. The guy can talk for years about football. Even as a rookie, I remember he was like one of my first guys I talked to in the locker room in 2017, and he was just like, "Yeah, this is what we do, bang bang boom," and he was still learning it. But now he is right about they can do more things as a group. And I want to get into those complexities with Levi's comment that we'll talk about next. But I also want to talk about, Brooke, it does seem like this is as flexible as a cornerback group as we've seen for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cam Sutton can play outside and in the slot. Ahkello Witherspoon can line up in different places. Levi Wallace has shown, hey, I am adaptable. That's what he did for the Bills. I think that's a major weapon the Steelers haven't had with that many cornerbacks that can pose as starters for a defense. And I think it's no coincidence that it's Teryl Austin's defense that's going to get the first crack at forming a secondary around that skill.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing that jumped to my mind when you list out all these guys that are these three running backs, cornerbacks, who are going to be back there, is that this is a very cerebral group. I mean, Cam Sutton, very thoughtful, very much a football mind. Same thing with Ahkello Witherspoon. That's been my takeaway every time we've talked to him, is just how deeply he thinks about really everything that we've talked to him. He told us one time, I believe he has, aspirations of eventually going to med school or becoming a doctor. I don't know Levi Wallace very well at this point because he is a new guy, but I get that same vibe from him. And I think I'm interested to see how all three of these guys work together with just this common, it feels like background vibe, whatever you want to call it. I would love to be in a meeting room with them. Although I say that, I also feel like all of them can talk a lot, and that would be a very long cornerback meeting. But
they just keep going.
It would go forever. It would be solving, like, they would come to a conclusion of how to get world peace. But I do think that the reason that they have all this versatility is because these are guys that were not necessarily like the guy anywhere. I mean, Levi Wallace, I think, is the closest thing to that, but these are guys that got their opportunities because of injuries in front of them. So they had to be ready to be plugged in to different spots. And because of that, now you do get this kind of fluid situation in the quarterback group. And that's it. I'm interested to see how that works without having like a guy like a Joe Hayden that's like a name brand lockdown corner that he's going to be on the outside every single time. It almost makes me think that the secondary can be used a little bit like how Matt Canada wants to use his wide receivers. Everybody can fill in different spots. You don't know where they're going to be. You can play to their different strengths on a play-by-play basis. And so I think that makes it really exciting. It also means it's going to be harder to keep track of where everybody is when we're charting it and taking notes and things.
Absolutely. I think it is going to be interesting and, tough to track because, what do the Steelers want to do? Cam Sutton, like I later asked him, do you want to stay on the outside? And he's like, man, I was like, yeah, sure. I like to play on the outside, but I know they can put me anywhere. I'm cool with that. Levi Wallace is like, man, like let the coaches decide where I line up. I just want to be on the field. So there's that kind of, I think, confidence that from this group that, hey, wherever we line up, we can be good. And I do think that that's a healthy thing to have in a cornerback competition. You're not going to see people getting petty about, where I like, hey, if you really believe what you're saying right now, go, when we put you here, just execute and all will be well. But, I liked your point about Joe Hayden. I brought this up all summer long leading into training camp. There's no proven cornerback one who either is or used to be a superstar corner in the NFL, and I think some people were panicking about that, like, man, like they got to go get a major player at the cornerback position. But this is a different kind of group than we've seen. This isn't Artie Burns or Cody Sensabaugh or Antoine Blake, a lot of guys who were just kind of, hey, go in there and hope for the best. But these are all guys like, hey, you've played at the NFL level. You started on the NFL level. You've had success as a starter in the NFL at the NFL level. So we're expecting you as veterans to, if not make the big plays, don't be the person that gets torched by the other team.
Right. I do think that there is some risk in having a cornerback group like this that is fluid, that is it's kind of I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. It's a collection of, I hate to assign grades, but it's almost like you have a collection of B pluses and there's no like A plus. Like you have some guys that are very good and very solid, but this is also what happens when your number one corner ages out and you don't want to pay them anymore. And also you didn't want to pay Mike Hilton back when he was available.
Yep.
I think that this is such a no-duh statement, but the secondary looks a lot different if you decided to pay Mike Hilton. And I think I would feel a lot more secure about how the secondary is going to look and going to perform if you even had one guy to anchor around in the cornerback position. Because the safety, Mink is there. I'm not worried about. That is taken care of. Terrell Edmunds is back. Is he necessarily the strong safety that they would have wanted as far as the open market? I mean, clearly, because that's who they signed. There were bigger names out there that you could have had like a really fierce tandem, but still you have a guy back there and a very prominent guy back there. But I do think that it sounds nice now thinking, oh yeah, they're versatile. They can all like switch in different spots, but is this just making the best out of a mediocre situation? I think that we'd be talking about it a lot differently if they had at least one guy to anchor on, who is like a Mike Hilton, because all these guys have had success, but it's also come in streaks. Like Akello got hot at the end of last season. Right. I need to see a full season from him. Cam Sutton is pretty good, but he's also like an under the radar guy. So I just want to see us see more splash plays from him to consistently feel like that they've got a nice complementary group back there.
I agree. That is a big part of this. We're going to talk more about that complementary group because there was something that Levi Wallace said that I thought was really interesting. And I wrote about this for SteelersNow.com. So go check that out in a minute. But we'll talk about what Levi Wallace said in a minute. I'm Chris Carter. She's Brooke Pryor. We'll be back in just a second right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. She's Brooke Pryor of ESPN. Brooke, we were talking about the secondary more. We did get to talk to Levi Wallace a little bit yesterday. Here's something he said that kind of like flipped a switch in my brain. I was like, oh, that was interesting about what the secondary is going to be able to do with all the veterans that it has. Here's Levi.
In the room, who's been out here was Cam.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, we had a great group of guys. Cam and Spoon, just 1 year older than me, but we all have the same experience. We've all played plenty of football, so it's easy to talk to those guys at an advanced level on football. As well as some other guys that are really smart in the room. But I know us three, we sit in the front, and we have very detailed conversations just about football and life and stuff, just getting to know each other. So that's been fun.
So along the lines of what you were saying, they will accomplish world peace with what they talk about. But part of what I really think is cool about this group, and it's interesting when he talked about that advanced level of talking to each other about football, the Steelers have wanted to deploy more complex coverage schemes. And I think that's a big reason why Teryl Austin is defensive coordinator. Not only did they go get Levi Wallace, but they also went and got DeMonte KZ, who's been filling in at free safety in the place of Minkah Fitzpatrick in the first two practices as he's working his way back from a wrist injury he got on a vacation. But I think what's really the thing here is that when they talk about this advanced level of communication, and I asked both Cam Sutton and Levi Wallace about DeMonte KZ, and they were like, yeah, he's been smooth, a veteran. He's taken everything in. He's communicating. I think that there's really going to be something a little bit more when getting these turnovers. And they've talked about turnovers are the point. They're the premium. That's what they're trying to do the most of the Steelers defense. They were I think 14th in the NFL last year in turnovers when they were second in 2020 and first in 2019. They want to get back to being in that top three conversation. But I think a big part of it is going to be, hey, a lot of interceptions, a lot of turnovers happens when you confuse a quarterback. And a big way to confuse a quarterback is to disguise your defense. But you can't do as elaborate disguises if you can't talk, if you can't relay information, if you can't think through things without having to relay it too obviously. And that, I think, is going to be an unspoken advantage with this secondary if these guys continue to come together.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think about Minkah Fitzpatrick saying that with Terrell Edmonds, that they have an unspoken type of communication. Sometimes worked great to their advantage. Sometimes they tried to do too much and then they ended up out of position or whatever else. So I think it's very much a fine line that they're going to have to walk. But I mean, I'm excited if they can't come up with some more complex coverage schemes and execute them and force those turnovers, because was it last year early on that they just were not getting interceptions and we were all that's right. We were all looking around like, okay, this is a problem. Yeah. They're going to be a lot happier if they can force those early, and then we won't have to ask them every single week, guys, what do you have to do to get an interception? So it feels like they are addressing that right off the top, and that's huge.
It is huge. And one thing that we've seen, we've seen this a few times at training camp. Also, if you are at training camp, do not be afraid to say hi to people. Like some people were like, can I say hi? And I'm like, yes, get on here. We do like to see our fans and talk to people who are excited to be there. But one thing that you have seen if you are there is this celebration that the defense does whenever they get an interception. And like someone launches the ball like 50 feet in the air and everyone starts like pretending to shoot it like it's a skeet range. And they're just like, boo, 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 boo. And they start yelling out. It's crazy. It's a lot of fun. So I asked Cam Sutton, I asked both of them, it's like, so who came up with this? And they wouldn't give up who came up with the idea, but they did say like, yeah, we might not do this during the season because we don't want to get a flag. But they said the reason they're doing is because they want to have fun. And they said, like, we want people to be excited to go get the ball, to be aggressive. And that's something that they're hoping is something that can create like a synergy and energy on the team. I think that little things like that, and I'm not saying that specifically is the only thing that's going to make them become a turnover team, but they're trying to develop a culture where, like, hey, this is who this defense is supposed to be. This is not supposed to be a defense that just, that occasionally gets the turnovers. You got to be about getting the turnovers. If this Steelers team is going to be a serious competitor in the NFL, the defense needs to do that. But I think they're getting the little things right. Mike Tomlin is watching over them. Teryl Austin is in the mix here. I think all these things are pointing to a more, coalesced secondary that can fit around each other really well and create these opportunities. And then when they create these opportunities, I think it gives the supercharge that this Steelers team might need to say, hey, we're not just going to be out of the playoff race entirely.
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite group to watch, or just my favorite side of the ball to watch during training camp, is the defense, because they have so much fun and it feels like they just play more free or more energized. And right now it kind of feels, I don't want to say the offense is wound up tight, but there's a lot of pressure on the offense right now to figure out, the post-bin era, is the O-line better? Like, there are so many question marks on the offense, whereas I feel like the defense, yes, there are still those questions, but it's almost just like fine-tuning a product that they already know is good, at least as far as we look outside of the run game, the run defense last year. But I do think that they are trying to create, or I think this culture is already created, but they're trying to further this culture of, celebrating. Like, I don't think I'm in the minority here, but I love when defenses go down to the other end zone and celebrate a pick. I love this in training camp. Like, have fun with it. Like you said, it started encouraging this stuff early. To me, one of the favorite things I've seen, and granted, this is, probably because they're going against rookie Kenny Pickett, but I love that the first 2 interceptions of camp have been, or at least the first 2 cornerback interceptions of camp have been Carlins Patel, undrafted rookie out of South Carolina, and Chris Steele, another UDFA rookie. Like, I like that everyone is getting in on this action, and the entire team still gets super excited for it. Yesterday we saw guys get a little bit chirpy after Spillane grabbed that interception, and then Mason Cole was in the middle of it. He said that Spillane started to kind of charge back at him afterwards, so got a little chippy. But funny. Hey, you know what? It's not training camp if tempers aren't flaring, if you're not just absolutely getting after it. So I'm here for it.
No, I'm here for it too. And Devin Bush and Robert Spillane both got picks yesterday. I believe Bush picked off Trubisky and off a Terrell Edmonds tip, and then
Spillane, in 7 shots.
Right, in 7 shots. And I think Spillane picked off Mason, I believe. No, he picked off Mitch too. So there was that. But it was funny when Robert Spillane, he's running it back, and then all of a sudden you just see a little bit of a scrum, and Mason Cole's up in there, and Marcus Allen's got him in a headlock, and it was a little nuts. But it got torn apart real quickly. It was like, hey, let's not take this too seriously. But that was something that used to be a thing in like the mid 2010s, when like the defense was starting to get better, and Joey Porter was the coach, and he wanted to say, hey, when you make a play on these guys, celebrate, get in their faces, make them mad. And like David DeCastro in the offense, they didn't like that kind of stuff. They were like, hey, we don't show you guys up when we score. And they're like, yes, you do. And it became a little bit of a rivalry. Right. Because first of all, it's like Antonio Brown, don't show everybody else. Right. Like, it's like, come on. But I thought it was very cool how that was a push back and forth. It helped make each side a little bit better. And I think right now you're going to see the defense win more of those battles. I think throughout the entire process of training camp. But I think it's also a great proving ground for a Kenny Pickett, who's probably not going to start this year. He's like, I have to go up against these guys who are like led by TJ Watt, and they're bringing pressure, and they got all these guys that are flying over the field. They're communicating at a higher level than I think the average secondary in the NFL. All those things can help do the iron sharpens iron mantra that Mike Tomlin talks about. Hey, make this group stronger. This group's make the other group stronger, and vice versa. Heck, he talked about it when we asked about all the turnovers that the defense was creating. And someone asked if it was like along the lines of, you value protecting the ball. What does that say about this offense? And he said, hey, it's good on good. It's Steeler on Steeler. The days when when the defense is taking the ball away, if they weren't taking the ball away, you say, what's wrong with your defense? Why aren't you taking the ball away? It's one of those balance things. But I think it's great to see this kind of competition in training camp.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. I got lost thinking about thinking about how much I love training camp fights and love training camps getting chirpy. I'm hopeful that we'll get it again today. I'm It's early. I was
You were
very-
daydreaming Cam
I was
Hayward
daydreaming.
body slamming somebody.
What does that say? You said like, oh, your life is over when you get here, but you have football. Yeah, because now before I was daydreaming about beaches, and now I'm daydreaming about fights at training camp and guys yelling from the sideline. I mean, it's funny that Cam Hayward's the name you go to. That's the first name I go to as a guy that's like chirping at the offense constantly
all the time.
It is so much fun. And that's why, I mean, I love that we're in Latrobe. This is my first time here. I love seeing all the fans. They're getting into it. I mean, it's just such a fun atmosphere.
And the pads haven't even gone on yet. That's the really cool part of this. This is still the light part. We haven't seen backs on backers yet. That's the crazy part.
Oh, man.
It's going to be exciting. Brooke, thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Let people know can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
I am on Twitter at BE Pryor and on ESPN.com. You can go to the Steelers blog from the NFL homepage.
Absolutely. Do check Brooke out and check us out at training camp. We're going to be there watching while the Steelers are throwing it down. And maybe you might see a fight. And if you're at St. Vincent College, I tell, hey, don't be afraid to say hi. We are very friendly people. Well, Brooke is. I may not be. But
I think it's the opposite. You are more friendlier than I am. I try, but you're the people person.
Hey, I'm from Pittsburgh. When someone says something in Yinzer, I'm like, oh, family. But Brooke, again, thanks so much for coming on. Thank you all, listeners and viewers, for checking out the Locked On Steelers podcast. We apologize for it coming out a little bit later than normal. But hey, things happen. Technical difficulties happening. I'm obviously in a hotel room. Some things have been going on. But I'll be back at St. Vincent today, this Friday, and I'll be there throughout the weekend on Saturday. There's a break Sunday, and then I'll be back Monday in full swing of things. We'll keep you up to date with all those things right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Follow us on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, YouTube, all the places where podcasts are hosted. We'll see you again soon. I'm probably going to try to upload some bonus episodes this weekend, so stay attuned to your feeds on all those places I just mentioned. You might get some bonus content. But again, I'm Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critique. Read my work at SteelersNow.com. We'll see you very soon.